Hey everyone, we want to welcome you back to theclinicaltrialsguru.com. We will be conducting an interview very shortly, but that will be in a separate video. Right now, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to do a news roundtable. This is going to be our third week of doing that. I've got one story to share. Don has a few to share. And then we're going to actually answer one of our viewers' questions in between. He's got a good question, and we'll kind of throw that in between because we figure that will be appropriate for this segment as well, since it's mostly for the research professionals, and the question comes from a research professional, and it's very much so oriented towards the research professionah. So does it make sense for you, Don?
No, but that's okay.
Yeah,
a lot of things don't make sense
to
me either. We're going to confuse you today.
Yeah. It makes no sense, but we're going to do it anyways. Right. So you want to share one of your stories first?
Yeah, let's. I just some stuff that came out today. Recently, I don't think this came out today, but this week, says pharma defeats biotech push for rapid approval programs. Biotechs butted heads with their far larger pharmaceutical allies over a key lobbying issues and lost. As Bloomberg reports, biotechnology companies threw their weight behind a plan drafted by North Carolina Democratic Senator Kay Hagan to launch a more rapid FDA approval program using fewer human trials. Now, I don't know how that affects the investigational sites, but for orphan drugs or treatment that address fatal diseases. So pharmaceutical companies beat back the measure, however, apparently not wanting to dilute existing safety measures. So anyway, there's just a little food for thought there, and if you're interested, this is a Bloomberg report. Let me look and see what date that came out.
So regarding the orphan drugs,
yeah,
they want to speed up the clinical trial process by having less red tape.
Yeah, and this actually came out today. So I got this, and actually my source was through Fierce Biotech. It's good place to subscribe to a lot of news in the biotech industry. So I picked it up there. That's just part of the article, but I think that gives you sort of a good lead in.
Yeah. And it's funny, I was talking to a guy on Twitter regarding orphan drugs and the FDA, and apparently, they're having and we'll get to my story, this is not my story. There's apparently, with these FDA orphan drugs, a lot of times they're not sponsored by pharma. It's just like individuals. So in this case, there's a doctor, and I got this tweet I actually got put onto this information by Kepsi. He's on Twitter, and I'll put his link underneath here. He was pointing me to some doctor in Texas, some oncologist, who claims to have found like a cure for cancer, and he's doing his own clinical trial. So he's not partnered with any pharma, but this guy was telling me that he's kind of shady, that he's charging people to join the trial because it's self-funded. So it's not being sponsored by pharma, it's being sponsored by this doctor.
Okay.
And he's claiming all these things. And some people actually say it saved their lives, but they have to pay for it. So it's a clinical trial. It's got orphan drug designation, but he's been doing it for decades now. And so it doesn't seem like he's looking for approval necessarily. It just seems like he's looking to earn revenues from the people joining the studies. And we talked about it here before. Most clinical trials would not charge you to join, even if it's an oncology clinical trial or a cancer clinical trial. Most clinical trials will actually reimburse you. Now, in those oncology trials, you may have some out-of-pocket expenses. But what this doctor is doing, and I'm gonna put the links underneath this blog post, is a little bit sketchy.
It's questionable unless you can hear the whole story from what that guy's trying to achieve.
Yeah, and we'll try to get him on. I don't even recall his name at the moment, but
because they're talking about fatal disease, and what's a fatal disease?
Right, life-threatening. Yeah.
Right, and so my thing is, unless he's not able to get grant money in order to conduct this, I don't know. But I would think that if he's been doing it for a decade, by now he's got enough success to prove that somebody needs to throw some money behind it to fund this.
Now, this is unrehearsed. I did not tell you this question before, and we told you this is not going to make sense, but we're answering a viewer question here. It's from Severus Tomescu, and it sounds like you're Romanian, so it's always nice to hear from my fellow Romanians
Can
out
you say
there.
something in Romanian?
Mulțumesc foarte mult for watching our blog. I'm sorry. But basically, he's based out of a company. I don't know where he is. He may actually be in Romania. But anyways, he asked a very interesting question. I thought we put it in this segment.
Mm-hmm.
It says, "Hey Dan, can you recommend some literature or websites, or do you have any comments from where I can educate myself on how to start a clinical department, clinical research unit, like a department within his bigger organization?" So he wants to create a research department.
See, is he in a hospital or university?
It seems like it. He's at a large company. Let's just put it that way. And he wants to start a clinical research department.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it's a medical group, a large
Okay.
medical group. And they don't actually do... Well, they may be doing research here and there, but he wants to actually formalize it and start a department. We'll let you answer this, but what I would suggest right away
Thank you, Dan.
is treat it like a separate business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And,
But in the detail, Dan's right. You need to treat it like a separate business. I don't know where you're going to get your funding. As Dan has a good saying, is that we sponsor the research companies for the pharmaceutical companies, because what you have to understand is that when you get started with these studies, is that you have employee costs. If you're having to lease out any space, you have lease costs. You have material cost. And when the subjects come in for the study, if it's a study where people are getting reimbursed, you have that cost. And you have to put that money out of your pocket beforehand. So if this is something you're putting together before you take it to department heads, I suggest you set up some sort of definitive budget in order to estimate what the cost is going to be to get this started. Once you get going, you can figure it can take you as much as anywhere from 30 days to 3 months to get your money from the sponsor. So you're going to have to build your costs based on that you have that much revenue there to carry you through till you start getting paid.
right.
The other key thing with that too is that if you do this, once you set up, day one, you want to be doing a study. You don't want to get all set up and then go after the studies. Go after the studies first and then set things up, because if you do it the other way, then you'll have this cost and no revenue activity, and you don't want that. Am I correct?
Yeah, and be prepared. I mean, make sure that people are on board with this and they don't have unrealistic expectations when you create this research department to conduct clinical trials at your company or your organization. You won't be making profits for 2 or 3 years. Just take that to the bank with you. Like, you will not be making profits. Now, after those 2 and 3 years, if you run a tight ship and you know what you're doing, you can start making some profits, but it is going to be a sacrifice. So you're going to have a budget. And the worst thing you can do is make it to like a year and 10 months and then say, you know what, this is never going to work out, and just quit, because you're so close to reaching the point of profitability, and you won't really know you're there until you're already there. Trust me, I know from experience. So that's what I would do. Now, he's asking for websites or resources for how to set this up. I don't think any exist. We're going to write a book on this.
And we can just, and the information we're providing right now, set it up is, again, you've got to have your budget laid out. You're going to need a coordinator, unless you're going to be the coordinator, and you need a coordinator that hopefully has some experience. And you're going to need a PI, and it's always good if you have a PI that has experience. If not, then that PI is you're going to have to be somebody yourself to guide that PI through the whole thing until they develop that experience. And you want to go after studies that's in the expertise of your PI's discipline. And what I mean by that, if your PI is a psychiatrist, then you want to go after CNS studies. If your psychiatrist is a general practitioner, you can do diabetes and hypertension studies. But go after ones and look for the good budget studies. Don't be afraid to negotiate on the budget. If they tell you that they're going to pay you this, don't be afraid to come back and ask for a little bit more, especially if they departmentalize some of the costs and says, well, we'll pay we need you to bring in a ophthalmologist, and we'll pay your ophthalmologist $70 when you know the average ophthalmologist is charging $125. Because if you don't, you swallow that cost, and there you go. You're already killing any money that you're bringing in the door. You have to understand that there's paperwork involved when you first get started. You've got contract agreements, you've got contracts and budgets, and then you get into regulatory. You got feasibility studies, you got beginning reports, and then you get into interim reports. So you're going to have somebody handling the regulatory. It's got to be somebody handling the coordinating. There's going to be development of experience in doing data capturing, because anymore, once you complete a source document, that information goes into the computer and directly to the sponsor, whoever's monitoring the study. So all these things are going to have to go into place, and you're going to have understanding of this. If you've never done research, and a lot of this stuff's going to sound really foreign, my suggestion is find a community college around there that is actually giving a class on this stuff, because there are some. We have them here in California where you can go and learn about being a research coordinator, and they'll bring you up to speed on all this stuff.
Well, apparently, yeah, and that's true. It seems like he knows that stuff. He's a coordinator in the past. He's actually an MD from Romania, which,
then he...
Again, I love seeing my Romanian people being successful.
Then he would be the PI. Then as the PI, if I can back up, and please forgive me for not knowing that information. As the PI, then you need to find yourself a good coordinator, because that coordinator is going to be your traffic controller. They're going to guide you on, you need to make sure you need to do this rating, you need to sign this, you need to sign that. And the coordinator will be making sure everything is done once you're done and everything's completed. They'll come back and say, yes, doc, everything's completed with this visit, or not completed, we need to do this.
Yeah.
So
here's where we are, Severus, and from one Romanian to another, okay? Sounds like you're in a large organization. You've got that advantage already. You've got an infrastructure there. It sounds like you're involved in medical industry already. So if you want to make a research department just for that, you're already off to a great start.
Yeah.
You've got all the people there. All you got to do is create a separate department, get your own SOPs, standard operating procedures, get someone in charge of regulatory, get someone to do business development and get the studies for you, get the PIs on board, and if you're going to be handling that, get some other ones with you for sub-investigators. Then you want the coordinators, like Don said, and then don't forget about the patient recruitment. And you want it, for everything I just mentioned, you want to have a SOP for it. So in your research department or research unit, you need to have all these things taken care of, and start with the SOP for every single position that I just mentioned. Hopefully it works out. I love to see you succeed at this, and let us know how it goes. And if you got any other questions, let us know. We'll be happy to answer more of your questions. So good luck to you, Severus.
Thank you, Severus.
Now, I got a story, and it's pretty simple. It's in regards to female participation in clinical trials, and why is it so low? Alright, and it's from let me pull it up here, American Medical Association, Heart Association. So, the phase 1 trial, first of all clinical trials tend to have lower female participants than males for some reason.
Yeah, they do. Absolutely.
And we're going to get into why we think why. And we're also going to talk about phase 1 studies, because this particular article, and I'll put the link underneath, they were talking about why women are particularly underrepresented in phase 1 trials and healthy volunteer. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're not necessarily, number one, females for whatever reason are not looking for clinical trials as actively as men. Number two, they're not necessarily excluded from studies, although from some they are. But the sites, if given a choice in a phase 1 trial, and we got to have phase 1 site directors on here who would hopefully come forward with providing us more information on why, females tend to not be enrolled as highly as male. In other words, if they have a male and a female and they can only choose one, they're more often than not going to choose the male.
It's quite interesting.
And I guess the question is why.
Yeah, that is a good question. I wish I had an answer to that one. That's something that's going to take a lot of investigation.
A lot of it has to do with pregnancy, obviously. You know,
but that can be an issue. But can you just? I mean, yeah. But at the same time, is that a guy can impregnate a woman too?
Right. But if he's impregnates a woman and he's in a trial, no one's gonna know necessarily.
True.
But
Very
the female, it's very hard to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right, because they do the urine test,
But
the
is
blood
that
test.
discriminating though?
Well, it is.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. And
Yeah.
so we want to know from you guys why. You know, it's these are issues people are bringing up out there on Twitter.
But is it the point that they're choosing more women than they choose men if they had the choice to put in a study, or is it the fact that fewer women are responding to the call to go into studies than men?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. So it starts with women wanting to join. For whatever reason, the females want to join less than the males. And then number two, it's the phase 1 clinics. So mostly in the early phase trials is where we're seeing this problem. Once you get to phase 3 and 4, you're seeing more equal distribution. But the phase 1 and 2 trials are pretty much just male oriented. So that's pretty much the way it is. So yeah, that's just a topic for the future. Now, Don, you got a last story here as we wrap up?
Yeah, there's some more stuff here, that articles here. You know, the big thing that's been in the news today, it's been about new hopes for curing Alzheimer's. And one of the things that I remember we read about last week, the last time, it was talking about, having cures for Alzheimer's by 2025. And we're talking about 13 years from now, which I'm happy about. Dan's got a little time.
I may have bought the Clippers by then.
Yeah, well, I hope you have enough mind left to buy it.
Hopefully I have enough mind left to run them.
I didn't know what you bought. Let me see what I got here. There is something here about new studies raise hopes for Pfizer, J&J Alzheimer's treatment, and see what they're talking about.
And allow us, by the way, to not change topics because we only have a little bit of time left. Pfizer and J&J have been getting a lot of trouble lately. That's part of the news. Pfizer got that recall for those female contraceptives. Yeah. So imagine, like, women were taking these pills thinking that, birth control pills. So they were having, unprotected sex, and then Pfizer comes out with a recall saying, hey, we hope you didn't take these pills.
After they had them taken.
You can have a lot of,
Well, I saw something about a new CEO, another CEO at J&J in a lot of trouble, which is not good. But let me read this to you. It says, new studies raise hope for Pfizer, J&J Alzheimer's treatment. New studies are raising hopes that I don't know the name of this medication. I want to get into it.
Yeah, we'll have the links on there.
Yeah, an experimental Alzheimer's drug may be safer than researchers for Pfizer and J&J had expected after cases of brain swelling were reported among the patients taking the drug. The condition could decrease over time, according to the scientists. It looks like we can treat for a number of years safely, Dr. Stephen Salloway of Butler Hospital and Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, told the Alzheimer's Association International Conference in Paris. Since a dozen Alzheimer patients had a brain swelling condition in 2008, studies of Bapid then Zumab. Yeah, it's a drug.
It'll have a sexier name. If
yeah,
it's ever released.
and the study is spelled BAPINEUZUMAB. The FDA has made developers perform additional testing of patients who are on trials of such treatments, and has restricted patients from participating if they have had more than 2 occurrences of certain small blood leaks in the brain, which is quite interesting. So anyway, take that to the bank. There is still a lot of work being done, and everyone's talking about promising things with Alzheimer's. So let's keep our fingers crossed, especially for us guys and gals who, in a short period of time, are going to be hitting that age.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a big one, a big blockbuster to make up for all the recent blockbusters turned generic.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap this one up because we got an interview right now, but we want to thank all of you for watching. We want to thank the questioner, Severus Tomescu, my fellow Romanian.
And I hope we answered your question.
Hopefully. I mean, it's kind of a generic question, and if we do find resources and things like that to help you out with making a clinical research department at your company, we'll send it to you. We're actually planning on writing a book on how to do this stuff, how to start a site, run a site. So it's very similar to starting a department. I mean, a research clinic is a department when you think about it. You just have the luxury of having that infrastructure already. So all you need to do is transfer some of that over to a new department. Hopefully this helps. Let us know what you think about these news stories, and as always, submit the news stories to us.
And stay in touch with us. If you have questions, please contact us.
This is Dan and Don signing off from theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Thank you.
You got it.